So, I got a question.
Okay.
Why is it that they call millennials the brokest generation thus far?
What's really crazy and the truth about that whole statement is, before you said that to me, I didn't even know that they considered us the brokest generation.
Well, looks like we need to talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
All right, bet.
Let's talk
Let's talk
about it.
I'm so weak. All right, so yeah. I saw this on Business Insider
Mm-hmm.
that millennials are the brokest generation right now, and I ain't just get offended, but I was like, why? Why is this so? And we got a lot to talk about.
I think even originally, like when you brought that to my attention, I was like flabbergasted and confused because I feel like because we live in a social media world, in a social media age, you see so much success. You see so many people, that appear to be winning. Of course, not just from a social media standpoint, but also your peers. And it's not even a specific type of person I've seen, people who are working 9 to 5s or in their career fields that are successful at that thing. And then I've seen people in the entrepreneurship space that are successful at what they're doing. And it didn't really matter if you were a nurse or if you were in real estate, if you were in network marketing, if you were just building your own personal business, if you're a coach, if you're a teacher. I've seen so many people within my peer group as well that is winning with what it is that they're doing. And so to hear that they think that we are the brokest generation sounds crazy to me.
Mm-hmm. It sounds crazy to you.
I was intrigued, like you said, also slightly offended, but more so intrigued on based off of what? Like what would make us, because like I said, to the naked eye or to the social eye, it appears as though there are a lot of people within this millennial generation, both men, both women, that are winning at a very higher level than I've actually ever seen before.
Well, when I first read it, I ain't gonna lie, I actually agreed with it. Now, I agree with it, but I wanted to know the facts. What's the numbers
Right.
that they're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason why you make that statement about it feels like our generation is doing well because there is so many professionals.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they wrote about that too. They said this is the largest generation in the workforce in the U.S.
Okay.
So that's why it feels as though there's a lot of people doing well because there's so many millennials in the workspace right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because baby boomers have now probably retired or about to retire. A lot of them have left the workforce. So that leaves the millennials at this point.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's part of that. But here's some numbers. So
Okay.
I want your opinion on this.
Mm-hmm.
They said us millennials hold 4.6% of $5.19 trillion of the world's wealth, of the U.S. wealth. So we hold less than 5% as a generation.
But aren't we the largest generation right now?
We're the largest in the workforce, but we literally own less than 5% of the U.S. economy's wealth.
That's crazy.
Now here's another statistic. Baby boomers, they're almost 10 times wealthier than us, with the numbers of they're 53% of the $51 trillion.
But are they not more wealthy because they've had more life? Like,
no,
because the baby boomers, they're the generation before the generation before us. So they're in their 60s and 70s at this point.
They're in their 60s and 70s, but they own 53% of the U.S. economy's wealth.
But they're double our age.
They're double our age, correct?
Well, I mean, in
age has nothing to do with it.
It doesn't, because now even after I said that, my thought just went to they're double our age. But if we double the time and we double our net worth in years, we would still only be at 10%.
Correct. So how does hearing those numbers? Because men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. Sometimes I think they're skewed a little bit. Sometimes, but
cracking up.
With these numbers, how does that initial reaction make you feel?
The initial reaction is now what aren't we doing that will put us in position to now be at 5%? Because like you said, it actually does make sense with what you said earlier in regards to the fact that we are working a lot more, we are building a lot of businesses, but we're not the wealthiest. Are we now in pursuit? But now it's like how long would it take us to get to that point to where we have increased our wealth value in the country? How long would it take for us to double our wealth value? And how many people are they basing this off of in real life? Because now it's like, if we're one of the larger generations that has come since since the baby boomer generation, then why and what aren't we doing that will position us to be so far behind in the wealth gap?
I think it's a number of things. I think one, it's because we're not a buying generation. We're more so a leasing generation.
Now that's a fact.
We don't hang on to things long term. We want autonomy to be able to come and go. Mm-hmm. So we want our freedom in that aspect. Now there's probably reasons behind that of why
I was an advocate for a very long time.
Yeah, but I'm talking about rental. We talking about rental properties. I mean, renting. Mm-hmm. Your property.
Yeah.
But also your car. We don't own many cars in our generation. So a lot of these things, why is it that we are shying away from ownership rather than looking to own things?
I will say for me personally, I was 100% with renting because that's what I knew. Although I come from a household where my parents, they do own their house. They've owned multiple cars over the time span. I feel like the way entrepreneurship feels, I won't say what it really is, but the way entrepreneurship feels is sometimes as if you're going to be moving so much that you don't want to stay in one place or sow your roots in this one area because I don't know if this is where I want to be long term. So like in our experience when we first moved to Atlanta, like this is what our fourth time being in a different place.
Yeah, it is.
So this is our fourth place. So by the time we actually buy our house, that would have been the fifth time we've moved in Atlanta. And but the whole thing was, okay, well, I was living in this one apartment and I've outgrown it. So, but I'm not necessarily ready to buy a house because I don't feel like I have the money. That is a major part of it, was between credit and capital. At certain points of time in my life, when I think about the amount of times that we've moved, I didn't feel like I had either the credit or I didn't feel like I had the capital. When I had the capital, I didn't have the credit, and when I had the credit, I didn't have the capital. Right? So like when I first moved here, when we first moved, my credit was like sky high. You know what I mean? I had like a 760. I was 22, 23 years old, didn't know what to do with credit itself. And I only had the money that I moved here with. So I'm not necessarily in the mindset of buying a house, even though now that I think about it, between interest rates at that time and my credit and having the little capital that I did, I could have found something maybe, in the low 200s with a very low mortgage. But that wasn't even the conversation that I feel like my parents were having with me. I think even parents, and they own a house, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It would be different if they never owned a house and they weren't talking about it. But I think the other thing was once my credit got kind of funky and I had the money, now I'm like, well, because my credit is trash, they're going to charge me more. So now I'm shying away from it for a different reason. And I feel like now we're at the point where, the stars have aligned, but at the same time, moving from one place to the next place was just like, oh, this spot is too small, and I don't like what they're going up on rent. So let me go find a bigger spot with a lower rent price. And now that served its purpose. And then it was like, oh, I need to move in the city. So let me go experience that. And then it was like, oh, we're pregnant. We're about to have a baby. We need more space. So it's kind of like, I was right.
I mean, so here's my take. I think we seen so many things from our parents, like, some people have seen, our parents say, hey, stressing about the mortgage. Mm-hmm. We've seen that, in our generation, that our parents stressing about paying the mortgage or paying this, or something happens in the house and you got to pay for it out of pocket. And you don't know that you're making these mental deposits that, okay, I don't want to have to go through this when I'm older. So maybe I need to rent and allow somebody else to take care of that.
There is a level of convenience in rent.
Yeah, there's a level of convenience in it. And I think we have some kind of childhood trauma that stops us from doing certain things when it comes to creating wealth. But here's another thing: we we also have created financial habits that aren't wealthy too.
Okay, like what?
Our generation, we haven't created. So we get into more debt than we do have income.
Okay.
So our debt to income ratio tends to be off. So if that's the case, how could you ever buy a house?
But I think when you're talking debt to income, home ownership is one of the major debts that you're going to accumulate.
Correct.
And I feel like what you're going to respond to me and say is that we have the wrong perception and we're thinking the wrong way about specific types of debt. Whereas I'm assuming you're talking about credit card debt and like stuff like that.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is we get into bad debts and not wealth generating debts. So what I mean by that is another statistic on here is that 39% of us are college graduates. So we're the most educated generation by far because that was instilled in us from baby boomers that typically didn't have a lot of education, but they did create a lot of wealth for themselves. One, because of pensions, 401ks, and stuff like that they had access to, but we necessarily don't have access to or will not in the future. So that already cuts us in half.
Okay.
Right? But also, we're taking out the wrong debts. We're taking out debts that are so high in interest rates and your income isn't growing. Typically, you have one income when you come out of college, right?
Yeah.
So if you got all this debt hanging over top of you and you have one income, that's already killing your chances of creating wealth right then and there.
Are you speaking of student loan?
Student loan is another bad debt. The reason why, because it can never go away.
That is
unless
true.
you pay it off.
Although most of us are sitting here
right
creating the next recession.
39% of us. So that's almost half.
So here's what I'll say to that. I feel like, especially within the Black community, I can't really speak for any others, but I feel like if you're talking about going to college, when we're embarking on that journey, a lot of the things that what was instilled in us was don't get a credit card because you don't want the debt, right?
Exactly.
But I feel like what should have been taught is about the credit game. Yeah. And I'm really excited about entrepreneurships and entrepreneurs, especially Black entrepreneurs that are in the finance space, because I see us championing, is that a word? We are becoming the champions and the catalyst within our culture that are us millennials too, that are teaching financial principles on so many different levels. You got Earn Your Leisure that are, they're talking about everything finance, just from a mindset, from investing and all the other ventures that they've talked about. But you have a lot of Black entrepreneurs right now that are talking about credit, how to understand credit when it comes to business, how to actually protect your assets, protect your intellectual property when it comes to your businesses versus just, we know to start an LLC. But and different forms of investing, different ways to start different things. And I think that's really powerful within our generation, because like you said, one of the things that you found out when you bought your first car was how trash your interest rate was.
Man, and I'll tell them about it too.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. But I'm saying it in the sense of when we heard don't get credit cards, we didn't hear based off of the debt, the debt amount that you're getting or the loan amount that you're getting and the interest rates, because a lot of the times, or how to utilize it, how to pay it properly. And so I think interest is one of the key things that we actually don't understand. And that's why people will go out and buy a car with a 13% interest rate or a 15%, 19% interest rate, or most of us don't even know to ask what the interest rate is. So these salesmen are really getting over on us. So I really think it's not, we're the most educated, but we're probably the least educated on financial principles that would help us understand how not only to create wealth, because I know we can talk a lot about how to make money. I believe that our generation is definitely one of the ones that is about a bag for sure.
Book smart for sure.
Book smart too, but we're definitely street smart too. You know what I'm saying? We're very street smart.
Life smart.
Wealth smart. I don't think it's life smart, because that would insinuate that we have no life skills, and that's not true.
I mean, I agree with you that it's not life skills; it is wealth skills or wealth building skills that we have lacked because of, if you're not taught this before you get out into the real world, you won't have any skills or education on it. But we are definitely book smart, and that's why we are the most educated generation, because that was taught so many times growing up that you better go to college. Most of us are first generation when it comes to that. But another thing, you know, I can agree with this quote or at least this statement is because one, it's not just the bad debt that we acquire. It's the spending habits as well. Because they're literally talking about our net worth as millennials as average is $8,000. $8,000. So we're talking about highly educated people have 8,000 or less to their name.
That's crazy.
Why is that? It's a lot of us don't understand 401k plans or, you know, investing into it, how important it is for the long game, because I think we think about fast money now.
Now we think about it. I'm not about to be at this job.
Yeah, we think about we're not about to. A lot of us don't want to work a job.
Yeah.
And you're forgetting some of the principles that they put in place. And that's why the baby boomers have created so much wealth, is because they've been investing into their 401k since they've been in the workforce.
Yeah.
You know, and some
life
of them
insurance.
have worked. Life insurance, things like that have helped them create these kind of wealth habits, or at least wealth building principles that we're lacking in the millennial generation.
But I even think, like, even when you get into the workforce, there's just a lack of education. That's why I said I can appreciate all the millennials in this space that are making sure that we start to become financially literate as they learn, because a lot of times people want to wait till they know everything before they start to share the wealth of knowledge. And I feel like as individuals that are very learned, as you said, we're book smart. I think that's why we're also willing to teach as we're learning things, so that people can be in position to start to understand new stuff. Because even understanding the life insurance principle, where there are other cultures that, you know, they're doing life insurance, they're taking out policies on everybody in their family, or everybody in their family has a policy. They have wills and all that kind of stuff like that. They have trusts set up, and I think we don't even understand trusts, and you know, that's something you and I have started talking about as well. And I just feel like the problem is that although the prior generations, they had the opportunity. That's what I'll say. I said, I think they had the opportunity, but unbeknownst to them, they did it blindly without understanding, because if they had the understanding, they would be able to teach it.
Correct.
Versus just having blanket statements about don't get no credit, don't buy credit, don't get no credit cards, or because I mean, I've experienced a moment in time where I owed our school some money to get my diploma, and I wanted to go to grad school at the time, but I owed the school money, and I can't get my transcripts, I can't get my degree unless I pay them. And the first thing that one of my parents told me was, oh, just take out a personal loan. Why? Because you have great credit. And let me tell you, my bank account at the time, it was payday one. Even when I got my first credit card, you know, one thing that I feel like I was doing unknowingly was going to apply for stuff on payday. Right. And so what that meant was that there was money. Not just that. I mean this in a way of approval rates.
Yeah. Okay.
Was because there was money in my main account, which was where my direct deposit was coming. But I had a savings. Like I told y'all, a saving was my thing. So I got, let's say, $2,500, $3,000 to $5,000 in my savings account, and I have a deposit of $1,500 from my job today. My approval rates were so fast because they're like, she has money. Because at the time, you talking about I'm somebody who's 20, 21, 22, so I'm not that old. So for them, that is a lot of money. You know what I mean? And my approval rates were very high. And so at that moment in time when I needed money, because of what your habits are, the first thing you're telling me to do is go get a loan. And at the time, it didn't feel like nothing because I could afford the payments. But then I moved out on my own, and everything changed because my income was different. So I don't even know what the interest, I should probably pull it up and see what the interest rate was on that loan. But it's the lack of understanding of, if you do this, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is what the repayment looks like, or this is, you know, the other aspects to it besides just that moment. When we talk about credit cards, they say don't get one just because, oh, you don't want to mess up your credit. Not the fact that it's not real money that you're going to owe back. That's the part that they never told us, you know. So now we have fear of debts, but certain debts we should be utilizing, because when you think about reward points, and I mean, not that that's a wealth generating thing, but it is cheaper when you're traveling. It's, you know, you don't think about the benefits that come with this stuff, or the ways that it does benefit your credit. One of the things we were talking about, like, one of the reasons why my car down payment was so weird was because they said your credit score is high, you just don't have diverse enough credit.
Gotcha.
You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
So now it's because what you said at the beginning of us not wanting ownership of things. Like, I don't want to own a house. I don't want to own a car. I don't want to own this and I don't want to own that. So now I think that credit is a game of credit cards.
You're right.
You know what I'm saying? So now I got credit cards. They all low usage, and now I got a high credit score. But now they're like, yeah, but now you don't have enough credit types. You know what I'm saying? And so I just feel like we're undereducated on most of these things, like life insurance and home ownership, equity, being able to pull out equity on your assets. Like, that's the part that I feel like we are so undereducated on. And that's probably why this statistic exists, is because we really don't know. Yeah. And we're learning now in our mid to late 20s and early 30s.
We're learning from experience. Like my experience when I bought my first car, literally the car was about $14,000. So it wasn't an expensive car. But the interest rate was 27% or something like that, right? And it didn't dawn on me because when it's your first time buying a car, you're not even thinking about these things.
You're excited about the red bow.
You're not talking about these things. You're excited about the red bow. They can smell blood the second you walk in the door, knowing that this is your first car and this is how they take advantage of you. So I'm looking through the paperwork. I don't know how long ago after I purchased the car, but I was looking through the paperwork. 27%. Over 6 or 7 years, I would have wound up paying $28,000 on the car. And I said, wait a minute, I'm paying for this car twice? I immediately was pissed. And I wasn't just pissed that I took this deal. I was pissed that I didn't know what I was looking at. Mm-hmm. And that was my wake-up call to, like, I need to start learning about this thing called money, you know? Mm-hmm. And thank God I had gap insurance. That car got totaled. They paid that off.
It didn't get totaled because you saw the interest rate. Because
when I saw the interest rate, I was determined.
Please don't
to not
try
be
this
in that
at
car.
home.
But whatever things happen
for your safety.
And I got out of that car, thankfully. But I told myself it taught me a lesson that now I got to start paying. I got to start educating myself on these things, because this is not something that if your parents don't know, or if your mentor don't know, or whoever that's in your life as you're growing up doesn't know, they can't teach you it. So who is it up to teach you?
It's up to me.
It's you. You got if it's meant to be, it's up to you. You know. So you got to go out here and find the information and figure out what does a good deal look like for you, right? So a lot of that is going on too, and a lot of that happens when we're 23, 24, 25 years old, just out of college. And a lot of them people are still in those type of cars. Mm-hmm. They're still in those type of deals, not knowing what they took. You see what I'm saying? Because
and our mindset is just, it's almost paid off.
It's almost paid off, but you don't know how much you just really paid for the car that isn't worth it.
Facts.
Right? So a lot of that is going on too. Now, another thing that's a part of this is that they're saying that we're also the richest generation. Now, here's the plot twist.
What in the oxymoron?
Right, but this is how.
Okay.
This is how. They said literally we're making the most money at anybody's age that we are now, but we're still spending the most. That's why. So we're making the most. We're earning at 29, 30, whatever your age is as a millennial. Your parents wasn't making as much money as you at their age.
Right.
So you are technically more financially stable than them. But we're spending so much on the debt that it's not adding up.
And the crazy,
and we haven't created different wealth vehicles. That's
because
why.
We don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think about, like, we spent the last 4.5 years talking about finance, talking about investing in crypto and Forex. And one of the things that we said when we were talking about investing and starting to educate people on this information was that retirement was a dollar amount, right? And understanding that millennials, we need $2 to $2.5 million to retire. And a lot of people don't realize that throughout our work experience, even if you're working at McDonald's and you work there long enough, you're going to touch $2 to $2.5 million. But I don't think we know what to do with it. Or the biggest area that I've seen both personally and in just the lives of others. But when I understood, the principles around what to do with your money, and learning that 25% of your income should be your living expenses, I think that changed everything from my perspective in regards to what was happening with the money, because I understood saving when I was living with my parents, but it's significantly different when you become your sole provider.
Correct.
And you start to look at the income ratio to living expense ratio, because I don't even really think it starts with like us spending the money. It starts with the fact that most of us have high living expenses, and it doesn't have to necessarily be high like you paying $7,000 a month in expenses. It has to be high based off of your income. And when I started to look at the percentages of it, when we learn this, learning that your living expenses should be around 25% of your income, our living expenses were like 85%. And
yes,
that's where people are trying to find money to do things like save, or where you look at your opportunity to save monthly and it's $250, $500, maybe $1,000, but it's because if I'm making $5,000 a month, my living expenses are 4,100 or 4,200. So there's not really much wiggle room because I still need gas. It's not much wiggle room because I still got to eat. And so all the aspects of that. And when I feel like I learned that principle, because I remember I started breaking that number down, because the truth is I saw two things. I either need to make more money or I need to lower my expenses. And I decided to do both. You know what I mean? And, what I saw was how much money do I need to now be making in order for my living expenses just off my income to be 25%, that they are today. That they were at the time. And I really feel like a lot of us, our expenses are so high from rent, from our car notes and car insurance, and stuff like that, that it puts us in positions to not have as much capital, because it's not just spending. We definitely spend a lot. I definitely think we are a high spending culture, and that's because of when you ain't never had nothing, or you didn't have what factors you want. You know what I'm saying? I didn't. My parents grew up. I grew up in my dad driving an Expedition. My mom drove a minivan. My first vehicle that I drove was my mom's car. Yeah. My mom's minivan. My first car they got me was a 2002 Ford Escape. And so when I do get the opportunity to get a Benz, I'm about to get a Benz. You know what I'm saying? And I think I understand that aspect of we are a spending culture, because we're making up for what we felt like we probably wanted as kids, or the type of household we wanted to grow up in. And because of stuff that we talked about, what you start to see. We went to a PWI, and the students that went there, black and white, it wasn't just white students, but the black kids, they had money too.
Yeah, they came from money. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I remember when Aaron, it wasn't even his birthday, but we had a friend in college. It was Tuesday, and his parents bought him a new BMW. It was white. What was the seats?
Man.
They were red.
Burgundy
interior, all white. It was just Tuesday. It wasn't his birthday. It wasn't Christmas. He hadn't done anything. And so when you start to see that, and you become our age at 23, 24, 25, 26, and now you're making the most money you've ever made, it's easy to start spending it. But I think before the spending, it becomes your living expenses that are so high that it's hard to have that wiggle room.
Yeah, and I think also you don't think for the future. I'll say this, that I feel like in our generation, we don't think about how much money am I going to have when I'm 60, or am I going to continue this hustle and bustle grind when I'm 60, or is all the same things that was privy to my parents that they had the opportunity to have, am I going to have those same opportunities to have? Am I going to have a pension? Am I going to have a 401k to lean on? Am I going to have the government to be able to help me retire?
Right.
And a lot of those answers are becoming null and void. The answer is no. And we don't think about that from the long term. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And when you don't think about that from the long term, you don't plan for it. You don't set up your estate. You don't set up your will. You don't set up these things going forward. Mm-hmm. Now, they did mention that in this article, which I agree with, is that we can catch up rather quickly to the wealth gap.
So how do we catch up?
So they literally said, okay, they said if an inheritance from a baby boomer was to come to you,
that would be wonderful.
That's one way, because think about how wealth is typically generated through generations. It's through insurance policies, through maybe you took out profit on your real estate on property or stuff like that, like things like that passed down inheritance is how you can create wealth.
Well, listen, that is biblical. First of all, let's add that.
That's
The
true.
Bible says a good man leaves an inheritance
Leaves
for
an
his
inheritance
children's
for his
children.
children. Correct. Now they also said low unemployment rate. That means that more millennials have to go to work. You're right. You're right about that.
We hate work. We don't want to go.
That's
Let
the
me not
thing.
say all of us, because that is a lie. There are some people that really do like their career, but I think the thing is, as millennials, we're not only realizing our worth. The other thing is there are things that are in us to do that we would prefer to do over working a job that doesn't agree with us. Like, you wouldn't want to still be washing cars at Enterprise, because that's not only is this stuff not what we went to school for, but it's just not what I want to do. Now, I understand doing what you have to do, but shout out to the people. Like, I have friends that they want to be philanthropists, so they work in the space of philanthropy. They just do it as a career. So it's not to say that we hate work. I think we're at a point as millennials where we don't necessarily want to do things that don't make us feel good. And, that could be a blessing, and it could be, detrimental to us.
I think it's because we have more options now.
We do.
We have more options than what our parents had. A lot of them, quite frankly, had to go to work. Mm-hmm. That was the only way you was going to be able to survive.
No, that's facts.
And really thrive, especially if you came together as a two income household. That's also another way for millennials to start creating wealth too. Is now bringing your income combined with somebody else's income, and that you create wealth a lot faster that way. Mm-hmm. And we're also seeing that the divorce rates and stuff like that, and marriage rates are declining and they're getting lower. So that also contributes to the reason why where we could be considered the brokest generation. Now, also saving and investing habits. We have to be we have to be better at saving and investing our money now for the future, and not thinking of instant gratification of like, I need this return right now, because we have so many things out here that can get you a great return immediately. It foreshadows you're thinking of slow money is
compound interest.
Compound interest. That is where wealth is really, really built. And once we start shifting that kind of mindset to that kind of mindset, we can kind of start really turning the times behind and really catch up, like they said in this article. We can catch up to baby boomers and how much they have of the U.S.'s wealth just by these four things alone.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely agree with that. Saving and investing is two things that I think is huge, because even if you look at things like Bitcoin, I talk about all the time how, like, I've said this multiple times in this episode, period, is how there's a lack of education. And one of the things that I think about is, when I graduated from high school, because you graduated a year after me, but when I graduated from high school, Bitcoin was like a penny. Like, at max, it was like a couple dollars. Yeah. And what I look at is that there were investment opportunities that were brought to us, once I met you. Which was 3 years later. But I look at stuff like that and I'm like, there was nobody in our camp. There was nobody in our family. There was my parents, none of my friends, none of my friends' parents, and none of my parents' friends. You know what I mean? That knew about stuff like that. But then I think about at the same time, if I was the person that was in Bitcoin at 50 cents or $5 or $100, would I have held it until the time last year when it was almost at 70,000? You know what I mean? Yeah. Because there is that instant gratification of wanting the money now. And I think that's one of the places where I always talk about what would I pick between like a 401k, IRA, and crypto. I'm definitely picking crypto, one, because I ain't got no job. But when I think about it, I think that is one of the beautiful things about things like 401ks, because it's with you and you're investing into it unbeknownst to you and without thinking about it every paycheck over the course of years. The thing with your personal investments is that unless you're really about that investment life, you're not really thinking about it to do it. So you're making your money, you're spending your money, you're making your money, you're spending your money, but you're not positioning yourself to actually be generating wealth because of how like we had a situation where I found an investment literally this time last year. Mm-hmm. I was at the gas station. I mean, I wasn't at the gas station. I was at the car wash. I was getting my car washed because we had a conference, and I saw somebody put SHIB on their story. It was a black.
I remember
It was a black
that.
story, and it said SHIB, and I was like, "This got to be some sort of investment of some sort." And I'm like a tech nerd. People don't know that I am a closet
100%.
tech nerd, and I just went into research mode while I was waiting on my car to get washed, and I found it. I found out how to buy it and all the stuff. I probably put in like $200 while I was at the car wash, and I came home. I told my husband, and he was like, "Okay, cool, whatever." By that next morning, that $200 was already $700, and I was like, "Yo, that was crazy." So I started telling everybody, I'm like, "Yo, y'all gotta go buy this, go buy this, go buy this." I had friends that bought millions and billions of SHIB at the time, and you look up in May, and some of them were worth 5 figures, some 6, some 7 figures just from that conversation. And so I think within the crypto space in the world that we are living in, is that investments do pop overnight. Money does come to us a lot easier, especially if that's one of your affirmations, which makes it very difficult to think long term. But I do. It is because we start out in a place where we don't want. I mean, we have popcorn success mentalities because things do come to us so much faster. We don't have to wait the amount of time that our parents did. Even the housing market. When we moved into this house, it went up $100,000 in equity in 6 months.
That leads me to what I want to talk about next, because we briefly touched on it, but they mentioned this lease generation. Let's talk about this lease generation that we kind of are in, within millennials. Do you feel like it's smarter to lease something rather than buy, like maybe a car? Do you feel like it's smarter to lease a car than buy a car? What do you think?
I'm not gonna hold you. If on a car sense, I definitely am all for the lease game. I'm for the lease game because, and this has no financial principle behind it, no thought. The truth is, I'm about the lease game because I like new cars, right? Okay. But I also understand that because my first purchase car that I bought last year was a leased car. So it's a great purchase car as well because the person that leased it didn't do that much mileage, right? So when you now buy a leased car 3 years after this person has had it, it is a brand new car because they didn't really do no damage to it and they took the depreciation hit. The other thing is I don't feel like you really take the depreciation hit because it ain't your car. It still belongs to the dealership, essentially. And I think they're a lot easier to get out of.
Okay, so my take on it, and I don't want to give financial advice, but this is just my opinion. I think leasing is better. I think leasing is better, and this is why. One, like you said, you do get into a brand new car, but
over and over again.
But there's give and take to this because you're paying the depreciation when you're leasing a car. You're paying more in interest, more than likely, because you're leasing a car rather than buying. Here's the difference, though, is that you don't have to take out the debt to buy the car, and then you can get into another car within 2 to 3 years of just from leasing, right? Now, I don't recommend somebody leasing something that is not of value that somebody else will want to take over.
Right.
So what I mean by that is, if you get a nice car that you're leasing, if something happens in your life financially and you can't afford the payments, you can literally transfer that lease over to somebody else.
Yeah, facts. Versus having a car that you just bought that might be a brand new situation.
Exactly.
And now I have to figure out
now
what's
you
the
get repossession. Now you get repossessions on your credit and stuff like that because you can't afford the payments.
Gotcha.
So it's a little bit different in that aspect. Also, now you're like I said, you are paying the depreciation when you're leasing, but there's programs out here where you can have the flexibility of you can take the car back. Like our first lease that we ever had.
Oh my gosh, I missed
the best leasing program I had ever seen at the time.
First of all, shout out to Instagram ads because I found it on an Instagram ad on my story. It was called Fair Leasing, and literally this was the best situation I've ever seen. One, it was very low maintenance, but they took over all the maintenance, and it was based off your credit, and they would tell you how much you could afford in a car. And we had two cars with them.
Yeah.
Monthly, we had 2 cars with them. But it puts you in position to where if you wanted to give the car up, there was no penalty because it was a month-to-month situation. It wasn't really even a month-to-month situation. It just was no contract. So there was no time period on how long you had to have it. So we went from, we had a Jetta
We had a
That
Jetta.
was the first car because remember he said he
Yeah.
got in his accident, so that was like we got a car like 90 days later through this app, and literally you talking about we had the car the next day
Yeah.
after you did all the paperwork on your phone, you read through all the contracts and everything like that, and we had the car the next day. But when we wanted to get rid of the Jetta, literally you just had to say I'm good on this, and
You had the autonomy to take it
to
back
just
whenever.
take it back whenever. And
there's
we got
programs
we
out
got
there.
another car that same day, where we were in that car for probably almost 3 years.
Yeah.
Almost 3 years, but that was based off of just wanting it and until we got a bigger car because of the baby. But it was a situation where it was just like, hey, I'm good, I'm done with this. Here's the mileage. Come pick this Joan up.
Yeah.
And it was that easy. I miss that. If they come back fair, if you're listening,
They're making a comeback. But these are
unofficial
programs
ad.
that are out there that people can take advantage of, where you have more options now.
Yeah.
That you don't have to put yourself in financial binds. Now, also, I would say if I'm buying a car, I'm not buying a brand new car.
Yeah, facts.
Because you are taking that depreciation hit as soon as you leave the lot. Meaning you buy a car that's $30,000, by the time you leave the lot, it's worth 20.
Yeah, facts.
Instead of buying a car that's maybe 2 to 3 years old, that's kind of still has some low mileage on it, they've already taken that depreciation hit. So when you do take it off the line, when you do start driving it, it still holds a lot more of its value. So if you go to resell it, or if you go to trade it in, you won't be typically upside down, depending on how long you keep it or how much you put down and stuff like that. But you'll have a better shot on not being upside down when it's time to either sell it and make a profit, or you going to trade it in for another car.
Well,
So
that's
these
why
are
I
things
said
would do.
that's why I said I'm 100% with if you're buying buy a leased car. Like a car that had been leased for the last 2 to 3 years, because the mileage is typically super low. And it's typically a very well maintenance car because the dealerships have to maintain it because they want to sell it after you bring it back. So I'm 100% when it comes to cars, leasing. I've been 100% on leasing with homes too, just because I felt like I was on the move so much. And this could be age, but it could be parenthood as well. And I'm just tired of damn moving, if I'm being honest. Like I am sick of moving. I am tired of paying rent, but it's based off of now my understanding of the real estate market, the real estate game, and what people are doing with the equity within their homes. Like when I heard that gentleman say that he had a friend that put all 4 of his kids through med school from the equity within his home, it blew my
changed your mind, didn't
because
it?
now it showed me like it's lack of information, it's lack of education, because I have parents that own a home. I have parents that are up in equity on their home. Why? Because we've been living there since I think they moved in when I was 3 years old. I'm about to turn 30. That's 27 years of built up equity.
Yeah.
But if nobody's talking to you about taking out equity to put your kids through school, then the only thing that you are thinking about is taking out loans, because that's what we were taught. That's how we were taught. And I'm not sure about all cultures, but I know in the African American culture, college is about either getting a scholarship or taking out a loan. That's the only way you're going, because most of our families don't have the amount of income that semester, that it costs semesterly to go to these schools. Like our school was $9,000 a semester. You know what I'm saying? At that time, I can only imagine what it is today. Except for you, Malcolm, he was paying $400 a semester.
Man, no, I wasn't. That's a lie.
I wish.
I wish I was paying that much. But I feel like this is what people don't understand. You gotta understand what's happening around you, what's happening in real time. What's the biggest wealth generating tool in America? It's real estate. So if that's the case, and most of millennials do not have real estate or own some type of real estate, you are completely behind the 8 ball. And that's really why the wealth gap is so big between us and baby boomers, right? A lot of them were first-time homeowners in their generation, which means they have been able to build equity over the last 30 years or whatever it is.
Yeah, facts.
Where that now jumps their net worth substantially, right? So what you don't understand, what people don't understand is what's happening right now. There are literally equity firms, big firms that are buying up land, buying up properties in order to rent to you. So we're stuck in we're this leasing generation. They say, okay, cool, you be this leasing generation,
and they're not taking advantage.
I'm going to take advantage of the leasing generation and buy up all the property, buy up all the land, because what can I do? I can set the market, I can set the price.
Yeah.
And then when I set the price, you have to pay it.
And the price is retarded.
And the price is high because inflation is up and so is these prices for these homes are up, right?
Man.
But it's happening for a reason. You're being targeted to do what you've already been conditioned to do and the habits to do, which is rent. So if you're already cool with renting, you have no idea how to build wealth, the real wealth. Okay, cool. I'm gonna buy this land. I'm gonna buy this house. I'm gonna make you pay $2,500 a month. I'm gonna make you pay $3,400 a month or $3,000 a month. To me, you're gonna pay my principal and interest over the next 15 years. I may be able to pay off this house. Everything else would be cash flow. Mm-hmm. This is how they're thinking, and they're trying to turn us into a renter generation, right? They're trying to turn the entire they're trying to turn us into renters generation, and people don't really see what's happening around them. Of course, inflation is the silent killer of your income too.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people's income isn't growing, but the interest rate is growing rapidly every single day, or almost every single quarter. So that's contributing to it too. But also, you have to understand that they're taking advantage of your financial habits right now, and that's why we gotta start getting smart and start understanding how is this country built upon wealth wise. It's the one thing that's the most appreciating asset.
That's facts.
And majority of us don't own them.
And you know what? I think where we started actually looking at that was when we saw Founder, the movie about McDonald's, where a lot of people look at, movie. Like, there's so many McDonald's everywhere. McDonald's is everywhere, but McDonald's is a real estate company. It's not a fast food chain. It's a real estate company, because what they do is buy the property and they're making money off of the building being on the property.
Correct.
Versus just, the money from burgers. It's not about burgers.
They're not a burger business. They're a real estate business. For sure.
I mean, but it's like, I think that's where my perspective was like, what? And I don't feel like I got it for a long time. And there's stuff that's like really hidden in plain sight for us millennials. But it's like you said, when you're a leasing generation, it's like, oh, well, what can I afford lease wise? What can I afford? What's my rent going to be? But we're not necessarily looking to purchase because we're probably feeling like we're going to be on the move. But now going into 30, like I said, I've had my come to Jesus moment about this rent stuff, is that even if I was on the move, I can sell my house.
You can sell your house.
I can't sell my lease, but I can sell my house.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And I mean, it makes sense based off of these statistics, right? When you hear it with no facts behind it, it's like, there's no way. That doesn't make any sense. There's no way that we don't have the most, and because we've been doing the most. We're the most educated. We're making the most money that's ever been made within a generation, but we don't own anything. And because of our lack of ownership, even so, that means even if I'm an investor in stocks, if I'm an investor in crypto and I'm making the majority of my money, I still have a problem.
Correct. You still have a problem. And also, that's why the numbers can kind of be skewed, is because a lot of millennials are in the cryptocurrency field. So a lot of their money is placed in cryptocurrency assets rather than stock assets and stuff like, stock investments and things like that, which also contributes to the numbers that we see. But it's still true nonetheless. We don't own shit. We don't own a lot of stuff. And that is the thing that has to really change within our generation. So this, I guess, is the part of when we have our life lessons.
Man, this was a very impactful episode, because I think it helps to start helping people be enlightened, but also start to think, right? Like we're not giving financial advice. We're just talking about our opinions and the things that we really learned through our experiences and transitioning in life as we are starting our process to purchase our first home. And that's stressful, but that's a whole nother episode for a whole nother day. But I would say my life lesson in this episode is really understanding the difference between income and cash flow. Because a lot of times we think we have cash flow because we have income, and income is how much money you're making, but cash flow is how much money you've kept and you're keeping throughout time. So, and different ways to build assets. And I think really understanding and being willing and humble, and because we're so educated, I think we need to start really being awakened to in financial education, not just formal education, but financial education, so that we can close the wealth gap. Because like you said, we have the ability to close it. And I think that we will, because I believe this is a moment in time that I call historic. This season that we're in, that we've been in since really the last like 3 to 4 or 5 years and where we're going over the next 5 years is going to be a moment that's going to be written in our grandchildren's history books when they're learning about the 2000s and the 2020s, because we're becoming so much more aware, we're learning so much more, implementing so much more, that we're going to be able to shift a lot of stuff. So if you're watching this, I would say my personal life lesson is, let's get even more educated than we have been, but let's execute on this stuff so we can close the wealth gap over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I think my life lesson is we got to start having the conversations more. We got to start getting serious about our future and where do you see yourself at 60, not just at 35 or 40. Where do you see yourself 20, 30 years down the line? And if what you're doing right now doesn't kind of align with kind of the lifestyle you want to live then we got to start making some decisions now and start having these tough conversations either with our spouses or with our friends, and holding people accountable of like, hey, what are you into right now? What are you investing in? Or what are you looking at? And things like that. Having these dialogues that sparks maybe a thought. That sparks a thought that you can now begin to run with and begin to create some wealth for yourself. Not just hurt people, but ignorant people create more ignorant people. And that's the real thing.
Sheesh.
And we got to be able to, continue to educate ourselves, but now pay it forward to who's coming behind us, teaching them these different hacks that we are learning because we wasn't taught it back then. But that don't mean we were excused to just being ignorant and never learning. It's so many people that are dying and they don't have any life insurance policies.
Yeah,
we have to GoFundMe's and stuff like that. When you can create wealth just for that little thing right there in your family and passing things down when you're not here anymore. And these are the tough conversations that we got to start having. So my life lesson is, let's get serious. We got to get serious about our finances now and not wait till it's too late.
Yeah, I love that. This was a dope episode. So if you're listening and you were impacted by this and you even have some thoughts, we want to hear what are you guys investing in? What are you guys looking at? How do you feel about the housing market? How do you feel about everything that we talked about today? Put it in the comments, like, share, subscribe on everywhere that you can listen to a podcast, as well as on YouTube. And we look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode. Again, I'm one of your hosts, Brittany Garrison. You can follow me at Brittany Danelle on Instagram.
Yes. Malcolm Garrison, co-host again. You can find me on Instagram, Malcolm_2_ Garrison, or just type in Malcolm Garrison, you'll find me.
And you can follow the podcast at So Let's Talk About It Pod on Instagram and on YouTube. And y'all, we love y'all. Subscribe to the Patreon. We are really having some dope conversations in this space about the different topics that we talked about so far, and we can't wait to give you guys more. So until next time, we'll see you on the So Let's Talk About It pod. All right,